Well, hello everybody. Welcome to episode 41 of Rev Runned. So these are my ramblings, and I'm going to ramble about just a little bit today. Today is Juneteenth. I'll talk a little bit about that. I'm going to give you a quiz about some guy named Jerome, and then I'm going to talk about some travel and the run club that I was on last night. And then I'm going to mention Bonhoeffer in passing in it, but he'll be covered more in depth on a future slide. But anyhow, welcome everybody. Hopefully you looked at my Theology Thursday of this week where I talked about eschatology, and I've been enjoying doing those little weekly things. I did not participate in the deep dive this week. David recorded one on his own, so make sure you find that as it's going to become available in different places. All right, here's the quiz for the week that I want everyone to take and to think about. I was talking to Noah France yesterday, one of my former athletes, former FCA kids, as well as just a friend now. So he's great. He just finished his first year of college. And I told him that I specifically wanted him to look at the quizzes from last week because I think he'd find them really funny. So hopefully you guys can look at some of the the dad jokes, in honor of Father's Day being this upcoming Sunday. I want you to realize that I'm incorporating dad jokes into these quizzes. So what is the Septuagint? Is the Septuagint, I think I misspelled it, but oh well, is it an ancient book about snakes? Is it the history of the number 7? Is it a nose-piercing bulls are known for? Or is it the Greek translation of the Old Testament? If you said it is a nose piercing bulls are known for, you'd be wrong. That would be a septum piercing. No, it is the Greek translation of the Old Testament. All right, what is the Vulgate? Is the Vulgate bad words? Is it the Greek translation of the Old Testament? Is it the French translation of the Bible? Is it the Latin translation of the Bible? It is actually the Latin translation of the Bible. Vulgate comes from the term for if you've ever heard the term vulgar, it just means common, or it became to known as like rude or unclean or unkempt. But its original purpose, the Vulgate is the Latin translation of the Bible, and it is intended to have the common speech, the common words, the common vernacular of the people. And it was done by a guy named Jerome, and we'll talk a little bit about Jerome. Not a lot. I'm trying to keep the rambling short this week. All right, what is the Textus Receptus? If you've never heard that term before, you are not alone. Is it the manual for a receptionist? Is it a text message receipt from the library? Is it the textual tradition for the King James? Or is this the Dead Sea Scrolls? The Textus Receptus is C, textual tradition for the King James. And this is kind of important because it is later known as the Byzantine text. And so whenever you look at the history of how the Bible is translated, there's people who would say, well, the Textus Receptus is what was used for the King James Version, so that should be the only Old Testament and New Testament manuscripts that we use. And then there's people who are like, let's use what's called the eclectic text, which is let's try to figure out what the original wording was. And this introduces the concept of textual criticism, which I'll talk about at some point. But just know that it's a big history of things that have been done, and Jerome did a lot of it, as well as Athanasius, who we talked about last week. All right, what was the Council of Chalcedon? What did it decide? Did it decide the hypostatic union was the official status of the church? Is it where the Knights of the Round Table met? Is it the formal name for actually Chelsea? Yeah, the long name for Chelsea. Or is it a council deciding dun 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 dun? I didn't finish that question, but so you could answer A or D, but is the council deciding the hypostatic union? All right, what is a patriarch? Or what does the word patriarch mean? Is it Latin for pastry maker? Is it Latin for father? Is it Latin for buying a tree? Or is it Latin for a dish to grow mold? So, patriarch, hopefully you got the buying a tree joke, as well as patry, Petri dish is what you grow mold in. So the answer is actually B, Latin for father. All right, place these events in chronological order. Rome's destruction by the Goth, Jerusalem's destruction by Rome, Samaria being destroyed by Assyria, or Jerusalem being destroyed by Babylon. I'll just run through this quickly for you guys. It's C was first, D, then B, then A. The destruction of Rome happened during the life of Jerome. All right. What is the language of the Eastern Church? Is it Hebrew, Latin, Greek, or Coptic? Now, this is tricky. There is a Coptic church, but the language of the Eastern Church, at least in the early church, would have been C, Greek. What was the language of the Western Church then? Was it Hebrew, Latin, Greek, or Coptic? Same options, but the different answer, it is Greek. All right, which of these books is in the Apocrypha? The Didache, Tobit, Hobbit, or the Confessions? Well, if you have no idea what the Apocrypha is, you'll have no idea which of the books is in there. But the Apocrypha would be the hidden books or the secret books that were part of what the early church debated as to what should be in the canon. Now, it was actually much of a debate. It was more so recognized by the Jewish folks whenever they had their Old Testament, or what they would have called their scriptures, and they recognized that a lot of these books were helpful and informative, but they weren't really inspired scripture by God. So the answer is Hobbit. Nope. Just kidding. It's Tobit. Hobbit was written way later than the Apocrypha was ever written. All right, which of these books is not a book by Augustine? Is it The City of God, Confession, Tobit, or the Enchiridion? The Enchiridion was probably one of the lesser known books of Augustine that people just wouldn't know by title. It's more known by the scholars. Tobit was part of the Apocrypha, and the Apocrypha was hundreds of years before Augustine. Augustine and Jerome were contemporaries of each other. They actually had a little bit of a beef with one another because Jerome learned Hebrew in order to translate the Old Testament into Latin, and Augustine's like, dude, we have the Septuagint, so why would you need to learn Hebrew? So, interesting fact there. So, final question. Jerome is the patron saint of libraries, scholars, translators, all the above, or none of the above. He is the patron saint of all the above. Libraries, scholars, and translators. Pretty neat there. So that's the quiz, and I gave you all that quiz so that way I didn't give you the cheat code. Jerome lived for about 80 years. I saw some people who said he was born in 342. Some scholars have said 347. So you know what? Let's just say he lived approximately 75 to 80 years. He was born in Dalmatia, and he died in Bethlehem. So he was part of a wealthy family. He studied in Rome, so he had access to all the best Latin and training for rhetoric and stuff like that. So he was incredibly well versed in a lot of those things. And he had a conversion experience, depending on how you look at it, early in life or late-ish in life. And at this conversion experience, he became... after the conversion experience, he became pretty well known amongst the church leadership, and he became a presbyter, so that's kind of an overseer. He oversaw various churches. He was influential, and he would have been part of the Council of Constantinople, not Chalcedon. But anyhow, in 382, he was asked to rework the Latin translations because they were not all good translations, and so he worked on that, and which later became known as the Vulgate. It took him quite a while. The big thing is that he translated the Old Testament from Hebrew, which is really a big deal. He eventually moved to the greater Israel or Palestine area, and he founded 2 monasteries. and he eventually died in one of them in that area. I've been to one of the monasteries associated with him. He wrote a lot of books, but he's pretty much only known for a couple of things. One is the Latin translation known as the Vulgate, and the other is his public opposition to this guy named Pelagius. The best way to summarize Pelagius is the fact that he thought you could be perfect, and that sin wasn't as much of an issue as the church was making it. It's a heresy by the church, this idea that Pelagius brought up, kind of like almost a works-based salvation where you aren't really born sinful, you become sinful. And the reason why I've been kind of waffling in how I explain it is, one, this is a super quick thing, so you're getting a summary, but primarily the works of the heretics in the early church were not well kept, and what we have is mostly their rebuttals by folks, and so it's easy to give a straw man argument for a lot of the heretics of the early church because we don't have their words in their own language. So I point that out because you'll often hear Pelagianism, where it's an accusation against someone, and it's usually a view of their view about sin and sinfulness. But that's like super esoteric, where if you're around a group of people who's accusing someone of being Pelagian, then you're around a very nerdy group of people. As well as if you're around a group of people who argues, no, this council was later or this council was earlier. Not every council is really known by the general public, and so it's okay if you don't know a lot of things on this. But Jerome, he's pictured here with a lion, and he's holding the lion's paw. Somehow, in the course of history, it became this legend that Jerome had this lion entered into one of the monasteries and was super mad, angry, roaring at people, and he somehow realized that it had a limp or was in pain, and it had a thorn in its paw, and he removed the thorn from its paw, and it became his pet. And so a lot of pictures depict Jerome with a lion at his feet. Someone pointed out whenever I mentioned this that this is also in like Aesop's fables, and so I don't put almost any credence in the fact that he would, in the story, that he would have had a lion, but it's just kind of a neat little fact. All right, let's skip forward, almost 1.5 millennium. So today is the celebration of Juneteenth, and a lot of people have no idea what Juneteenth is. It is a holiday that I wasn't aware of until 2014 to 2016 area, whenever there was someone who mentioned it, and I was just not really sure what at all they were talking about. And so I want to give a little bit of an explanation, because it's okay if you are not aware of everything. Depending on your news source and the information that comes your way, you really don't know what it is all about. So in 1863, the President of the United States of America issued the Emancipation Proclamation. And so when Abraham Lincoln issued this Emancipation Proclamation, it really had no teeth. It was something that couldn't really do anything because that the Confederacy had seceded from the Union. So it took actually having Union troops on the ground there to enforce any of the laws. And it took 2.5 years for this issuance of freedom to make any sort of work, because on June 19th, Union Major General Gordon Granger arrived on the scene in Galveston, and he read this order of the freedom of all who were enslaved. You might actually know this story a little bit because a movie was made of it recently. I can't remember the actor's name, which is really crazy, but he's the guy who says, all right, all right, all right. And so he was the guy who played Union Major General Gordon Granger. So this is, so on June 19th, it was actually known and declared, and freedom happened for the enslaved people. And so I just have a couple of dates here. The dates that are bigger dates to know would be 1863 is the Emancipation Proclamation. 1865 is whenever Juneteenth happened, also coinciding with the 13th Amendment abolishing slavery. And then in 1979, so over 100 years after this happened, in the state of Texas, they started recognizing Juneteenth. In 1997, we have the Juneteenth flag was made by an activist, and it is the flag on the bottom right. I don't know if you've ever seen that flag before, so let me just explain the symbols, because I think it's actually really interesting. It's a solo star in the middle, recognizing Texas as being the first state inside of the recognition of Juneteenth. You have the star extending outward around that, which shows a newness, a growth, a beauty about it. You have red, white, and blue recognizing the United States of America, so it is still a patriotic symbol saying, like, hey, America, we're growing, we're getting better. Blue, I believe, stands for courage. Red stands for the blood of those who have fallen. And white stands for purity, if I remember my state flag history correctly. But I want to point out that red on the bottom. You see that arcing on it, and it's showing a horizon. So if you were to look out, if you were to be out in a wide open space and be driving down the road, you'll notice the curvature of our globe, the sphere that we're on, and you'll see the horizon where the sky and the ground meet, and it's supposed to show this new horizon happening. So I think it's a beautiful flag. I had never seen it really until I was researching this. What you'd usually see is the picture above that, which shows the colors that are associated with African American pride and heritage, as well as the fist with the breaking the chain. That'd be the symbols that you'd usually see whenever you see anything regarding Juneteenth. But I thought it'd be interesting just to show those two items. I want to give a couple more dates in the middle, because whenever we celebrate Juneteenth and we think about Juneteenth, when we think about upcoming events, just in our history, we miss a lot. So in 1868 was when the 14th Amendment happened, which granted birthright citizenship and guaranteed all individuals equal protection of the laws and due process of the law. So this became the bedrock of the civil rights. And then we had the 15th Amendment in 1870 that prohibited this denial of citizenship, so it took another time for this to happen. Then we have the 19th Amendment in 1920, which was the extension of voting rights. So with the 15th Amendment, there was this refusal to allow people, even if they were citizens, to vote based on previous servitude and stuff like that. All right, so then we have in 1964 the outlawing of poll taxes. So then finally in all of this, just thinking about this, the many different steps of legally putting what we should do as people who are just considering truth and reality. And I frequently think about, as Christians, there's Galatians 5:13 through 15, and freedom is a concept that is just very interesting and vague to a lot of people. Are we free to do whatever we want? What does freedom actually mean? And from a theological standpoint, this is so the free people who were legally allowed to enslave someone prior to Juneteenth thought, well, it's my right, it's my privilege, I'm free to do whatever I want. But in Scripture it says, you are called to freedom, brothers, not only to use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love, serve one another. For the whole law is fulfilled in one word, you should love your neighbor as yourself. But if you bite and devour one another, watch out that you do not consume one another. And so I just think on Juneteenth, we should celebrate freedom that's available. We should humbly recognize that we had 100 years of proclaimed freedom, but that freedom wasn't freedom for everyone. And but this is also where this became a federal holiday in 2021. And just moving forward, trying to celebrate freedom, and then encouraging one another to use freedom for the best that we can. So, in closing, just the ramblings that I have today, federal holidays can be very misunderstood, very overlooked at times. Like today, we are in Astoria. We're visiting all the friends and folks back from our years of pastoring and coaching out here. And on Monday, our youngest had a fever, and that completely wrecked some plans, but also was a beautiful demonstration. Someone opened up their house that let us stay there. Just awesome hospitality there. But then yesterday, Thursday, the middle child got a fever after the youngest child is feeling fine. And so then Brittany is trying to figure out, where do we go? What do we do? And we're looking up hospitals, trying to figure out what works with our insurance, trying to figure out, all these things, because our insurance is now Ohio-based. And guess what? With it being a federal holiday, we were encountering the hours at different places just being different and not answering the phone because hours are changed. And so I think so often we have this view of federal holidays where it's like, oh, it's just this disruption in my schedule. Why aren't people this? Why aren't people that? Instead of us sitting and going, what was the purpose of this holiday? Let's think about it. Let's talk about it. Let's reflect about it. Let's consider maybe how we can be called to greater valor and virtues in light of this. And so that's my challenge. Every federal holiday, whether you are someone who is up to date on anything and everything, or someone who is learning, just take it as an opportunity to grow. I was reading the book of Proverbs this week, so in my read-through that I'm doing of the Bible this year, I don't have an exact plan. I'm kind of doing cover to cover, but then I read the Gospels, and I read through the Psalms, and so I'm like, well, I'm in 1 Kings, and then I'm also in Psalm, and then I'm now also in Proverbs. And Proverbs 2, it starts off with a lot of these conditional clauses that I just found really fascinating. And I'm going to tie this together, even though I'm rambling. It says, "My son, if you receive my words and treasure up my commands within you, making your ear attentive to wisdom and inclining your ear to understanding. Yes, if you call out for insight and raise your voice for understanding, if you seek it like silver and search for it as for hidden treasures, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom, from his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He is a shield to those who walk in integrity, guarding the paths of justice and watching over the way of his saints. Then you will understand righteousness and justice and equity, every good path. For wisdom will come into your heart, and knowledge for the pleasant of your, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Discretion will watch over you. Understanding will guard you." Like, we don't enjoy learning. There's something that I'm saying, a collective we as the United States, as folks, like, being challenged on, is that true? Is that right? It's not something that we enjoy. But common sense isn't a reality. If we think about what the Bible says about humanity being fallen, where our inclinations of our heart are sinful, we are not fully able to grasp everything instantly and constantly, that means that if we really want to understand, if we want to live just, holy, pure, righteous lives, then it takes this genuine pursuit, and the Lord blesses that pursuit. But it also then should make us humble, where, like, if we encounter something that we don't like, or that makes us feel uncomfortable, or that challenges us in our presuppositions, things that we think or believe, how about we just sit in that discomfort and think about it? Let's figure it out. And so, there's been a lot of discomfort this week with sicknesses and with storms rolling in, with what are we going to do? How are we going to handle this? A lot of disappointment with plans that have been disrupted. But that's part of traveling, and you got to embrace what you can. You got to embrace the positive. There's this concept of practicing gratitude. And so I apologize, the picture on this is going way over. I'm sitting on a porch swing, which is incredibly fun, but might cause some motion sickness for the people who are watching this video. But anyhow, just practicing gratitude. We will not get everything that we want in life. That's one of the few guarantees. But can you find the good in where you are? Last night, I went to the local run club, and I ran with Noah, and so we were talking, and I was just thinking, I wish I was in the condition that I was a few years ago, but I just celebrated running and chatting with him. It was just really, really, really good. But then another area, just in all of that, just trying to find the good. So I ran around the country block out here. It's a 4-mile loop, something that I've done hundreds of times. So in the 9 years that we lived here, I know I ran it more than 40 times a year. And so that puts it at hundreds. And I was thinking about how, there was a time whenever I was running around that block, probably around, with Isaac Jones, and we were going a 6:20 pace. And I know my heart rate was not really high. And then I was running this week around the block, and my heart rate was 150, and I was running an 8:20 pace. And I was like, this is ridiculous. But then it's hold on. Progress is not always exactly how we want it. And sometimes we just got to be grateful. Be grateful that you're out running. Be grateful that you're able to be out around a loop. Be grateful that you have headphones that you can listen to a podcast on. And so just running, travels, all this stuff, it's been an interesting week. But hopefully this rambling brings edification to someone. Practice gratitude, practice learning, practice humility. It really is something that brings virtue into the world, as well as helps you as a human being flourish. Whenever we look at the negative, which would be a lot of our defaults, it hurts us. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't critique, we shouldn't reevaluate, we shouldn't measure, and try to improve. But it means that what is our goal? What is our purpose? What is our intention? If, as the Westminster Confession of Faith says, that the chief goal of man is to glorify God and to enjoy Him forever, then a negative mindset will be the opposite of that. But instead, if we operate from a position of gratitude, I think it will be a blessing. It's been great seeing a lot of the athletes that I coached, friends from church, friends from the community, and glad that we're able to be back here. I look forward to being back in Mamilo with routine and schedule, not dealing with doctors out of network, but you know what? We have to deal with every step of life as it comes. So have a great day. Bye.